Mike with Mike Walton Consulting here, and in this video I want to take you guys through building your own virtual lab environment. Now this is actually something that's really simple, and if you're anything like me, you love technology, you love playing with it, but you don't want to spend the hundreds of dollars for a piece of Microsoft software that you're only going to be using to be playing around with and testing. So what I'm going to show you is how to use a software called VirtualBox installed on your local computer to be able to set up multiple virtual machines in an isolated lab environment. This is something very simple to do, and all you really need is a computer with at least 6 gigs of RAM, and you'd probably want about 500 extra gigs of hard drive space. That can be an external drive or even some other iSCSI external hard drive space, but you need the actual space. We're going to go over downloading VirtualBox from their website, which is completely free of charge. There's no charge, it's open source software. And we're going to go over how to obtain Microsoft software for the free 180-day evaluation period. Now, most Microsoft software actually comes with a 180-day evaluation period. Microsoft Exchange comes with that. Microsoft Windows 2012 R2 also comes with that. So we're going to go over downloading those and how you can get set up in your own free virtual lab environment. Okay, so I'm here on the VirtualBox website, which is simply www.virtualbox.org. Pretty simple to remember. And I'll place a link to this in the description below. So the great thing about VirtualBox is not only can you set up your own virtual lab, but you can also run this on a Windows machine, you can run it on a Mac OS X machine, you can run it on Linux, and you can even run it on Solaris, if anyone actually uses Solaris anymore. So if you have a Mac and you want to run a version of Windows alongside your OS X operating system, you could use VirtualBox to facilitate that. So now once we're on the VirtualBox website, we're simply going to go to the crazy huge download VirtualBox 5.0 icon. If you don't see that, then we have other issues. Yes, so we're going to go ahead and go there, and what we're going to see is first we're going to have a few different other options that we can choose from. We can choose from the Windows host, the OS X host, the Linux host, or the Solaris host. Well, I'm running a Windows PC 8.1, so we're going to go with the Windows host, obviously, because those other ones aren't going to work. So I'm going to click the x86 AMD 64 link here, which basically just says, hey, this will work for 32-bit or 64-bit operating systems. So we're going to go ahead and just click that guy, and my download's going to immediately start. You can see down here in the lower left. Now, I have a fast internet connection, so this isn't going to take very long, and depending on your internet connection, it could depend on how long it's going to take. So now that we have the downloaded exe file, we're going to double-click it and run through the install. And first, we're going to get this nice little welcome screen like a good little install application should be. And then it's going to give us multiple options that we can go through. So we're just going to start by clicking Next. And we can see all these different options we have here. We have USB support, networking support, bridge networkings, host-only networking, and Python 2.x support. Really, there's no reason to just deselect any of these. So we're going to just keep them, and we're going to just move next. If you want to change the location of where your VirtualBox installation is being installed, then you just simply click Browse. I like where this is being installed, so we're just going to leave it here. So we're going to go ahead and just cancel that, and we're going to go Next. And this is where we are going to select whether we want an icon on the desktop, whether we want an icon in the quick bar, and whether we want certain files to be associated with VirtualBox. This is really going to be just the VirtualBox virtual machines, which, why not? So I'm going to leave all that, and we're just going to go ahead and click Next. And this is going to give me a warning. So if I'm doing a download or something like that, I probably don't want to go through with this at this moment, because this warning is telling me that it might temporarily disconnect my network while it's actually installing, because it's got to add some drivers and some other little things to the actual network devices. But I don't care about that. So I'm going to go ahead and click Yes. And then it's going to just say, hey, are you ready to install me? And I say, yes, I am. So we're going to go ahead and click Install. And this only takes a couple of seconds. I don't want to start it up just yet, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck this box and click Finish. Now that the VirtualBox installation is complete, and we have a nice icon on our desktop for our Oracle VM VirtualBox, let's go ahead and double click it and take a peek at the application. And we can immediately see that we get this, again, nice welcome screen. And we can see that we don't have any virtual machines set up quite yet, and that's understandable because we just installed the program. But before we can install any VMs on here, we need to go download an evaluation version of Microsoft's operating system. That way we can put it on here. We could also download Linux or something else, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to download Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2. So we're here now at Google. If you don't know what Google is, you're probably going to want to watch a couple other videos. But if you understand what Google is, then great. You're right in line with us. So from Google, to find a Microsoft software for evaluation period, it's pretty simple. All we need to do is type in the software we want and then evaluation. So I'm going to type in Windows Server 2012 R2 evaluation. And you can see I've already searched for it. And right here at the top, we see Try Windows Server 2012 R2 TechNet Evaluation Center. This is great. This is exactly what we want. So we're going to go ahead and just go into this guy. Now, I do want to do a forewarning here, and what we don't want is we do not want to download this software from a site that's not Microsoft.com. That's going to potentially set us up for pirated software or software that's full of malicious content that we do not want. So make sure that if you're downloading this, it's from a Microsoft.com or technet.microsoft.com or msdn.microsoft.com. Anything that really is Microsoft.com, you'll be able to trust. So you can see here immediately we're presented with a download, and it's asking me to sign in. You do need to have a Windows Microsoft account to be able to download the software, but don't worry, that's completely free. So when you go to click sign in, there'll be a place where you can actually sign up. I already have a Microsoft account, so I'm going to go ahead and just skip all that, and we're going to go ahead and put in my account information and sign in. And we immediately see now that I'm presented with the Windows Server 2012 R2 evaluation of 180 days. That's, if you don't know, that's about half a year. That's about 6 months. So it's great. And what we want is we have multiple different things we can choose from. Azure, if you're not aware, is Microsoft's cloud. So it's a way of paying Microsoft, and you can install Windows Server 2012 evaluation in their cloud. It's going to cost you some money. There's the ISO image, which is basically a CD but in file format. This is what we're typically going to use, and this is what we're going to use. The other options we have are Virtual Lab, which is basically using Microsoft's Virtual Lab to kind of play around with the software. And then the last one is VHD, where if you're using Microsoft Hyper-V, don't worry, I'll be making another video on that very soon, then you might want to download the VHD, and that would be a very quick install for you. You don't have to actually go through a huge install. For our purposes, we're going to download the ISO. So I'm going to click ISO, and I'm going to click Register to continue. And it is going to ask you to register. So you're going to put in some information. It's really not a whole lot. Really your first name, your last name, your email address, your primary role in your company, really some very basic information. Again, this doesn't cost you anything. So you're going to put this information in, and you're going to click continue. Now that we have the ISO file, we're going to go back to VirtualBox, which you can see here on my screen, and we're going to get into the good stuff. We're going to create our first virtual machine. So let's start. We're going to click New, and we're going to give our VM a name. And in this case, we're going to give our VM the name DC, which typically stands for Domain Controller. When you're building a lab environment, especially a Windows lab environment, it's always best to start with a domain controller, because this is the foundation of where you're going to build everything else. This is where your users are going to be created, your other computers are going to be created, and this is going to be where you kind of unify everything together. So we're going to name this DC because that's going to be the domain controller. And we're going to choose the type as Microsoft Windows, and we're going to choose the version as Windows Server 2012. Now, there is no Server 2012 R2 in this list, but I've found that that really is for informational purposes more than actual function. So don't fret if you don't see Windows Server 2012. That's fine. We'll go ahead and click Next, and we're going to choose our memory size. Now, memory for Windows Server 2012 should be at least 2 gigs of RAM. This is why I said earlier that you should have at least 6 gigs of RAM on your PC before you start creating a virtual lab, because every server you create is going to take that much RAM. So if we say we're going to allocate 2 gigs of RAM to this virtual machine, it is going to use up 2 gigs of RAM on your computer. So just be aware of that. The more RAM you have, the better. So we're going to select 2 gigs of RAM. We're going to go ahead and click Next, and then we're going to create a virtual hard disk now. We don't have one to attach, so we want to create one. So we're going to create a virtual hard disk, and we're going to click Next, and we want to choose VDI here. Now they have multiple other options, and all of these other options are typically used for other hypervisors or other software. So a VMDK, for example, is VMware. A VHD is for Hyper-V. VDI is the VirtualBox disk image, so that's the one we're going to use because it's going to work the best. So go ahead and click Next here, and we want to dynamically allocate this. So dynamic allocation as opposed to fixed size means that it's only going to use the amount of space that we're going to give it, or it's only going to use the amount of space that we're going to need. So if we say the server is going to have, or the hard disk is going to have 60 gigs of space, and we dynamically allocate that, the actual file size on our computer is only going to be maybe a meg or two in the beginning. As we start putting files on it, the amount of actual space that's being used, that VDI file is going to grow to a max of 60 gigs if that's what we made it. This is why, because it's a better use of your storage space. So we're going to do dynamically allocated, and we're going to click Next, and we're going to name it DC, which is perfectly fine, and I want this to actually be 60. You can see we can do up to about 2 terabytes of space here. Don't need that much. So we're going to do 60, and I'm going to click Create. And voila, we now have created our first virtual machine. There's obviously nothing on it, and we haven't done anything with it, but it's created. Now, one of the most important parts of setting up this virtual lab is going to be how we do the networking. We want these virtual machines to be isolated from the rest of our network, but we want them to be able to access the internet, so if we need to, say, download patches or download a specific piece of software. So we're going to create a new network for them to use. So from the main view here in VirtualBox, we're going to go to File and Preferences, and then we're going to choose this Network section. And from here, what we want to do is we want to create what's called a NAT network. And a NAT network is basically going to be a network where all of the virtual machines can talk to each other, but then they do something that's called natting to where they go out to the internet. Now, this is something that's very simple. You don't necessarily need to know how it works. You just need to know that it does work. So we're going to go ahead and click this little plus sign right here, and we're going to give it our own little name. We're going to want the network enabled, and this is going to be, we're going to do MWC LAN 1. There we go. And what we can do here is then we can choose the IP address we want this to have. We can even have it support DHCP. This way, when we bring a new virtual machine online, it'll automatically get an IP address. How cool is that? So this is all fine. I have no problem with this. So we're going to go ahead and just click OK, and we now have our new MWC LAN 1. So we'll go ahead and just click OK. Now that our virtual machine and our NAT network has been created, we want to put the virtual machine in the right network, in that NAT network that we created, and then we want to install the operating system on it. So we just want to go into the settings. So we're going to highlight the VM that we created called DC, and we're going to click Settings, and we're going to go down to Network. And we can see already that we have Adapter 1, Adapter 2, Adapter 3, and Adapter 4, and Adapter 1 is the only one that's enabled at the current time. VirtualBox, you can only really assign 4 adapters, but for typical lab purposes, there's no reason you need any more than that. So this network adapter is already enabled, and it's showing it's attached to NAT. Well, we want NAT network. So we're going to drop the drop-down list and choose NAT network, and then we're going to choose MWC LAN 1, which is the only option. Okay, good. And then we're going to go to storage. So now what we need to do is we need to actually attach this virtual CD that we downloaded to our virtual machine so that we can install the operating system. So we're going to click storage, and you can see I have my dc.vdi virtual drive, which currently you can see right now is using a total of 2 meg, but can grow to a max of 60. Perfect. So we're going to click on this empty CD, little CD icon over here, and then we're going to go to the right, and we're going to click this other little CD icon here with the down arrow. and we're going to do choose virtual optical disk. And what we're going to do here is you can quickly see that it's opening up a browse window, which is what we want. So we're going to go to C, and we're going to go to ISOs. And you can quickly see that we have our Windows Server 2012 ISO that we downloaded. So I'm just going to select that guy and choose Open. And you can now see that he is attached, and it's showing a size of 4 gig. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and click OK here. And once all that's done, we're just going to turn on our VM, and we're going to run through the setup. So now if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to go ahead and start this virtual machine here just by clicking the Start button, and we're going to get this installation going. Now I'm probably going to speed through the installation a little bit just so that you aren't sitting here watching a small little ticker bar just kind of pop across the screen. But you're going to get the idea. So you can see already that that ISO image is loading up. We're getting to a Windows Server 2012 R2 that we downloaded a little while ago. So this is very simple. We're just going to English, English, and US. We're going to click Next, and we're going to go through the installation. And we're going to click Install now. And we're going to choose Windows Server 2012 Standard Edition Server with a GUI. And we'll click Next. I accept, Next, Custom. We're going to choose our hard drive, which is that 60 gig drive that we gave it earlier. We're going to choose, go ahead and just choose Next. And we're going to speed the video up now because it's going to take a few minutes. There we have it. That actually installed a lot quicker than I expected. It's probably because I have a solid state drive on this PC, but it went very quickly. So we're now at the setting. Everything's installed. We're just going to give it a quick password. Let me type it right. And it's going to finalize our settings, and we're going to pop up to a desktop here. So Control-Alt-Delete. Password I typed in. It's going to load our user profile, and you're going to see immediately that we're going to be at a desktop. I say immediately. It's going to take a second. But you can see now we're at a desktop. Windows Server 2012 R2 Standard. Nope. Build 9600. We now have the operating system installed where we can do whatever we want with it. And you can see because of VirtualBox, we already have a network connection up. Now we should, if I do IP config here, we should be able to see that I have an IP address in the range of what we decided when we created that NAT network. And if I go now to Internet Explorer, we should see that we have an internet connection. Let's make sure it doesn't make a liar out of me. Don't use, okay. Add, of course, add Google, and boom. We now have an internet connection, and this server is completely isolated from everything else within our network because of that NAT network. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, and please, if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave me a comment. Just down there below. And if you like this video, please feel free to just click that like button. It helps me out tremendously. And if you want to see more of these types of videos, please subscribe. And again, thanks for watching.